Good evening, everybody. Loyola's in the playoffs, and the score is 58-58. I see a lot of people watching it on their phones. There's only a few minutes left, and that's what's happening down below us in the atrium as all the students are watching it, being projected. So we expect as soon as the game's over, a whole bunch of people are going to come in. But I think we should get started because some of you might not be that crazy about basketball, but you're here for the Climate Change Conference. So thank you for being here. And I would like to invite our student, Brandon Folsom, to come up and speak the land acknowledgement statement for us.
All right. I will begin the evening by reading Loyola's Land Acknowledgement Statement. The Loyola University Chicago community acknowledges its location on the ancestral homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, which includes the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi tribes. We recognize the tragic legacy of colonization and genocide that still impacts Native Americans' lives today. As a Jesuit university, we recognize our responsibility to understand, teach, and respect the past and present realities of local American Indians and their continued connection to this land. Now, please join me in welcoming the founding dean of the School of Environmental Sustainability, Dr. Nancy Tuckman, to the stage.
Thank you, Brandon. Thanks for opening our event with Loyola's Land Acknowledgement Statement. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Loyola University Chicago's 9th Annual Climate Change Conference. Thank you all for coming, even in this weather, and thank you for the 800 or so people who have registered to be with us online as a webinar. This may be our largest conference ever with 1,700 people registering, and that's pretty exciting. Again, my name is Nancy Tuckman, and I'm the founding dean of the School of Environmental Sustainability, and I'll be the host of our annual Climate Change Conference tonight. For those of you who are less familiar with Loyola University Chicago, let me brag a little bit about our position on the environment. Care for our planet is one of Loyola's core values. This university has been seriously dedicated and committed to caring for the environment since the year 2002, investing millions of dollars. Oh, there's a lot of clapping down there. We've invested millions of dollars in reducing the environmental footprint of our campus infrastructure, as well as educating students through new academic programs and a brand new school. Now, in its 4th year, the School of Environmental Sustainability continues to grow with more than 500 students in 7 undergraduate programs and 2 master's programs. We've grown from 7 full-time faculty and staff to 39 and 5 adjunct faculty who are teaching and developing solutions through their teaching and their groundbreaking research. They're also providing students with hands-on co-curricular learning opportunities in our flagship urban agriculture program, our biodiesel and biosoap manufacturing program, campus sustainability, as well as our LUREC restoration programs. To date, Loyola has accomplished a 70% reduction in our carbon emissions, and we're on track to be carbon neutral by January of 2025. Yes. And thank you to Kana Henning for really leading that, and Aaron Dernbaugh as well. We're also building a new climate action plan for our university that will get us to decarbonization, which means we won't be using any fossil fuels. We won't be paying any RECs for fossil fuels that we use. We will be producing 0 greenhouse gases, and that's a really ambitious and exciting goal. We have won multiple national prizes and rankings for our carbon reduction and environmental work, including being the inaugural awardee of the National Laudato Si Leadership Award in 2022. Our goals for the annual Climate Change Conference reach beyond the campus. We aim to encourage and engage our community to foster a greater understanding of the complexities of the climate crisis and to invite people to become part of the solution. This year's conference theme explores the impacts of climate change on food production and food security. Our speakers throughout the entire conference provide perspectives from scientists, from food growing practitioners, policymakers, and community leaders. Conversations will span from the global scale to the regional and local levels. Climate change is the existential threat to our sustained livelihoods. It's the #1 concern of Generation Z. And when we poll Loyola's incoming first-year undergraduates, 54% of them state that Loyola's commitment to the environment was either important or very important to their decision to come here as a freshman. This particular event allows young people to discover how they can turn their concerns into actions. The event also draws inspiration from Loyola's deep commitment to social justice, addressing the need for equitable solutions to the climate crisis. Over the years, the conference has brought thousands of people together, creating connections and sparking new collaborations. This event continues to be a collaborative effort across the university as well. And to open the conference tonight, we invite the Department of Fine and Performing Arts to once again grace us with a dance and a choral performance. Please allow me to introduce our faculty collaborators, Sandra Kaufman, who's with us online. She's the Director of Dance, and Dr. Kirsten Hedegaard, the Chorale Director, as well as, of course, the student members from Ignatian Voices, Loyola Percussion Ensemble, and the Loyola Dance Program. Please file in, performers, while Haley Sangston of Ignatian Voices comes to the podium to introduce the piece that you're about to present.
To exploring how music and the arts can inspire conversation and action around climate change, the Loyola Choirs are annually involved in the LUC Climate Conference. This year, members of Ignatian Voices will be joined by members from Percussion Ensemble and several dancers from the DFPA to perform Katerina Gimon's Apple Tree. In the words of singer-songwriter Aurora, Apple Tree is a song about the potential hidden in all of us. The lyrics address the urgency of the global climate crisis, but also serve as a hopeful reminder that within each and every one of us lies the power to make a difference. If we unite, listen, and support one another, together we can save the world. We hope that you will join us for our April 21st concert, when we will be performing Sarah Kirkland Snyder's Mass for the Endangered and the world premiere of the Kyrie Eleison from Don Rioli's Misa Laudato Si.
Thank you, Kirsten, and thank you, performers. Gosh, this performance is kind of a perfect example of how art can serve as such an effective instrument for social change. And we found our collaboration with the Department of Fine and Performing Arts to be really valuable and really exciting, especially for this climate change. So thank you, and congratulations on another lovely performance. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Amanda Little is a professor of journalism at Vanderbilt University, and she's the author of The Fate of Food: What We'll Eat in a Bigger, Hotter, Smarter World. She's written about energy, technology, food, and the environment for the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Rolling Stone magazine, and the New Yorker. Her work raises awareness of environmental problems in compelling ways while offering some unique solutions. We're very pleased to have her here tonight, and especially grateful, Amanda, that you came on your kids' spring break. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Amanda Little to the stage.
Hello, good evening. Does anybody have an update on the score? Overtime. Okay, we will feel free to shout it out when we know what has happened. You all are heroic for being here and resisting the pull of this white knuckle ending to the game. So thank you so much for being here. Hello to all of you online, and let's just take one more moment to give it up for the Ignatian voices and those percussionists and dancers. That was amazing. I'm so inspired by that performance. I have loved getting a chance to talk with student leaders today, and I am so grateful to you, Nancy Tuckman and Margaret Helwich, for inviting me to connect with this great community. I toured your SES campus today. That bodes well. That sounds good. And wow, this is such a state-of-the-art campus and facility, and not just the labs and the actual built structure, but the students are really spectacular. I'm shouting out to Bailey and Elise and Maddie and Joseph, who are among the students I met with today. You are there you are. You are the rising generation of food producers in this country, and I really am honored to have connected with you and to have seen your great work. This is a really informed and engaged audience, and in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to explore the following questions, many of which you've been exploring yourselves. First, what are the most urgent problems we're facing in global food production? Second, why is the quest for food security so relevant now? Why is this an economic and moral imperative, not just here, but worldwide? I want to share my approach as well to investigating this topic. I've taken a multi-year journey into the lands and minds and machines that are shaping the future of food. And fourth, what do these emerging solutions look like, and how are they beginning to redefine sustainable food on a grand scale? My research has focused on this central paradox of our food future. The global population is on track to increase to 9.8 billion people by mid-century, up from about 8 billion today, and growing middle-class populations around the world are demanding more diverse and protein-dense diets. And meanwhile, arable land, as we've known it for centuries, is decreasing. The International Panel on Climate Change has predicted a decline of 2 to 6% every decade going forward due to climate stresses. That's millions of acres of arable land going offline, every decade while population climbs. This is a map of the world's arable land created by the US Geological Survey, and this GIF is based on research from the Global Commission on Adaptation, which is a research group sponsored by the United Nations and the World Bank. And it recently predicted that climate change could reduce farming yields by up to 30% by 2050. So this is what that predicted shrinkage of farmable land might look like in just the next 2.5 decades, which is a shockingly brief amount of time. Many of you will be in your primes. We all will be in our primes, let's say, by 2050, we hope. And this is under our watch, right? It's critical, too, to note that overwhelmingly the climate stresses of heat and drought in particular will fall hardest on smallholder farmers. This map shows the distribution of 500 million smallholder farmers worldwide, and you can see they're overwhelmingly located in equatorial nations. Some of the hottest and driest regions of the world that, according to climate models, will become only hotter and drier. And my interest in this topic began in 2014 when I read a portion of the IPCC report of that year, which predicted that by mid-century, the world may reach a threshold of global warming beyond which, quote, current agricultural practices will no longer support large human civilizations. And that line gave me pause when I read it then, and it gives me pause today. And I pivoted my focus as a journalist focused on the energy industry into agriculture. I have come to believe that we're going to see radical changes in what we grow and how we eat in the coming decades as these environmental and population pressures intensify. And that phrase, current agricultural practices, that was in that IPCC report, that's shifting. And I spent many years investigating these changes and hope to give you a sense of it. But overall, the main way that most people will experience climate change is through its impact on food. This is a quote from Tim Gore of Oxfam. It's going to affect what we eat, how it's grown, the price we pay for it, and the availability and choice we have. One USDA scientist put it to me this way: the single biggest threat of climate change is the collapse of food systems. And that was really shocking for me, again, as someone who'd really focused on energy and transportation, to shift into this realm of food production. It sounds like a distant problem, but disruptions in food supply are already evident almost everywhere. This is a somewhat dim map, and bear with me for one more map slide, but in the past 4 years, the combined impacts of climate change, of the COVID-19 pandemic, and increasing geopolitical conflict have accelerated food insecurity and pushed some countries toward famine. This map of global hunger by the UN's World Food Program, it shows us how closely correlated climate change is with food insecurity and how prevalent this problem is in the global South and how relatively insulated the wealthy global North is from these stresses. And it reminds us of this critical point, that those who have the least will suffer the most from food insecurity. As I mentioned, famine is on the rise globally, and disruptions in food production anywhere hits food insecurities the hardest. Today, more than 500 million people lack reliable food supplies, and 45 million are on the edge of famine. But even here in the wealthy US and throughout Europe and Australia, the stresses are becoming very evident. And I put together this montage of clips from news coverage in recent years to give you a sense of how this is playing out in our midst. And if you want to interact with this map, you can go to hungermap.wfpworldfoodprogram.org. And before we watch this little movie montage, does anyone have an update on the score? Down by 2. Oh, all right. Oh, up by 1. Okay. 20 seconds left? Okay, we're going to watch a movie. Oh, 50 seconds left. We're going to watch a little movie, and then we're going to know the outcome. Fingers crossed, everybody. We got to have moments for levity in the midst of this, I do realize, fairly dire information that I'm sharing with you. But trust me, it's going to turn. We're going to get onto some good news in a bit.
Do you plan on cooking up a tasty pasta dish this week? Be careful, there's an olive oil shortage halfway around the world. Morning Insider Vince Girasoli delves into this shortage and how your taste buds could be affected right here in Chicago.
Partino Restaurant cooks up close to 10,000 meals a week, but in his kitchen, Chef John Coletta is stocking up to avoid the shortage of a key ingredient.
Italian extra virgin olive oil, 100%. You're going to be challenged to find it. Production is down by 57%.
A severe winter in 2018 and a massive bacterial infestation are crippling Italy's olive trees.
The annual harvest is underway, but winemakers in France's famous Chablis region are worried. For the second year in a row, production has dropped, and vintners like Laurent Pinson of Domaine Pinson Vineyard say climate change is to blame.
It's incredibly stressful.
Frogtown Brewery's Mike Voss says much of that stress comes from having to hunt for critical ingredients like hops. Hops are what give beer its flavor and aroma. Most of the country's hops are grown in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, states that have suffered increasingly severe droughts in recent years.
A citrus shortage is growing in Florida. A tree-killing bacteria is wiping out the state's famous orange groves. At least 90% of the trees are infected and orange production is plummeting.
Next time you go to the grocery store, don't be surprised if you have trouble finding sweet Georgia peaches. Nearly 80% of the state's peach crop has been wiped out this year because of the weather.
The rising cost of vanilla sending a chill down the spine of ice cream makers. A worldwide crop shortage means that the extract is now more expensive than silver.
Scientists at Lawrence Livermore National Lab predict that climate change will bring hotter weather and cause a 40% drop in California avocado production over the next 3 decades.
I assume there used to be trees here.
Yes, there were trees here.
He's cut down 51,000 almond trees in the past 16 months because he can't afford to water them.
We've lost between a third and half because of dry conditions. The result is that some prices will have to rise. The limited maize crop is causing problems for the cattle breeder. He's already had to feed his livestock the harvest that was meant for the winter.
An invader in Central America has the U.S. government getting involved. The aggressor, a coffee plant fungus. It's called coffee rust, and it's caused more than $1 billion in damage, especially to the plants which grow high-end specialty beans. The fungus is driving up some coffee prices here in the U.S., but the bigger concern is the devastation it's causing Latin American coffee farmers.
Okay, what's the news? Tide. Oh my goodness. We're in this together, everybody. I do think this is a wonderfully surreal interaction of climate, food deliberations, and a critical sports game. But again, we have to hang on to our ropes, and that may mean basketball. I want to reiterate that the impacts of climate change on food production are evident everywhere. There are no regions of the world, no types of crops unaffected. And the pressures themselves are incredibly varied, right? Consider this apple blossom at a farm I visited in Wisconsin a couple of years ago, which shows the impact of shifting seasons. This was a problem of a warm winter causing early bud break and followed by a normal freeze event, which destroyed the premature crop. So drought, heat, flooding, superstorms, invasive insects and blights, weather volatility, these threats are incredibly complex and region-specific, which makes it a really difficult story to tell. But it adds up to a single story. Climate change is becoming something we can taste. This is a kitchen table issue in the literal sense. Update? Wow. Wow. I bet it'll still be going when I'm done, so you guys will be fine. Just to bring this story right up to the present, here are some extraordinary numbers generated by the U.S. Farm Bureau of crop losses in 2023. So in just the past year, U.S. farmers lost nearly $30 billion with a B dollars of crops. Wheat, soy, corn, cotton, fruits, and nuts due to severe weather and disasters. So this is data, and this is data visualization that gives rise to something you know very well, which is we are living in an age of disruption. And just the past year, that same blossom freeze that I just showed you and witnessed in Wisconsin a couple of years ago happened to apple farmers in New Hampshire. The state lost 75% of its crop this year. Georgia, my neighboring state, lost 95% of its peaches this past year for the same reason. Global crop losses are also pretty shocking. Just last year, just a few notable statistics. In December, Ireland wasn't able to harvest 60% of its potatoes due to excessive rains and soggy fields. Olive oil production in Spain declined by half due to extreme heat waves. Italy suffered a 12% loss in its wine production due to weather extreme. It is no longer the largest wine producer in the world as a result. In fact, Europe, Australia, South America, wine production fell to the lowest levels since 1961. In Palestine, wheat production fell 20% last summer due to the effects of climate change, creating significant food insecurity even before the war had begun. So I want to stress that the most concerning impacts are not on the crops themselves, but on the people who tend them. It's an accepted reality that the business of food in the United States is sustained by the toil and grit of mostly undocumented immigrants. They operate our dairy farms, process and pack our meats, and tend and harvest our fields. What's overlooked is how imperiled these essential workers have begun. They now face rising deportation crackdowns and increasingly dangerous environmental stresses with no clear path to citizenship even after decades of tax-paying labor. And government data shows that more than half of all farm workers in the US are undocumented immigrants. The growers and labor contractors that I've interviewed say it's far more, about 3/4. And probably 40 to 50 deaths are recorded a year due to heat stress among farm workers who have no medical support, very little medical health care. And they're uniquely vulnerable to these stresses, not just heat and drought, but also wildfire pollution and excessive rainfall. So these are both of these images are recently taken in California, and they depict an important reality, that climate change is fundamentally a disturbance in hydrology, right? Increasingly, we have too much water in some regions, not enough water in other regions, or we can shift from too much to not enough water in the same place in a matter of weeks. In the next 30 years, the severity of drought in the US is expected to almost triple, but the severity of flooding is also expected to surge. Remember that food production depends fundamentally on a stable water supply, and more than 75% of our fresh water on this planet flows to agriculture. So disturbances in hydrology inevitably cause disturbances in food production. Meat production, in particular, places a huge burden on land and water supplies. A single pound of beef, you may have heard this, but it's interesting in this context, takes on average 1,800 gallons of water to produce, vastly more than what it takes to produce the same amount of pork or grain. But on top of that, nearly 40% actually of our grains go to livestock. So when corn and soy production is disrupted by drought or flooding, so is meat production. And this matter of meat has really been personally challenging for me. It's part of what drove me into this research. My husband is from Chicago, and forgive the cliche, but it's true that there has been a lot of sausage and bratwurst eaten in our household. I personally have tried to modify my own meat consumption, and I confess I'm a failed vegan and a struggling vegetarian, and also a not very talented backyard farmer. Is anyone out there a struggling vegetarian? Maybe a quarter of the audience. It's tough. But this really pushed me as a journalist and a storyteller into this story, in part because I began to wonder, how are we going to solve these challenges in our food systems if we can't necessarily rely on backyard farming vegetarians to do this from the ground up, right? And this is my first attempt at backyard farming, which started out looking great, and then after about 2 months, the entire thing grew into a unified organism. And I learned that, oh yeah, I'm supposed to prune, but I mean, that was like kind of time intensive. So Bailey and Elise, I'm gonna be asking for your help next time around, if you can come down to Nashville for that. But this question really launched me on a multi-year globe-trotting journey in search of answers. Took me through 13 countries, 15 states, from apple orchards in Wisconsin and tiny cornfields in Kenya to massive Norwegian fish farms and computerized foodscapes in Shanghai. I investigated new and old ideas, from robotics, GMOs and CRISPR, vertical farms, to edible insects and permaculture, fermentation, and ancient plants. And I began to see that farmers and entrepreneurs and academics like you and community members are radically rethinking local and global food systems to make them resilient and sustainable. There's this growing controversy out there about the best way to ensure food security. And you have folks like Bill Gates proclaiming, as he did, food is ripe for reinvention. Huge flows of investment are funding methods of high-tech, climate-smart agriculture. But many sustainable food advocates bristle at this approach. They want food de-invented, thank you very much, and they advocate for a return to pre-industrial, pre-green revolution, organic and biodynamic farming practices. And this rift between the reinvention camp and the de-invention camp has existed for decades, but it's really escalated to a point where one side is coveting the past, the other coveting the future. And as someone observing this from the outside, I really began to wonder, does it have to be binary? Will either approach on its own succeed, and do we need a synthesis of the two? And that's what's beginning to happen. Innovators are marrying principles of old world agriculture and state-of-the-art technologies to create what I call a third way to our food future, a synthesis of the traditional agroecological approaches and the radically new. An opportunity to use the most sophisticated technologies of our time to support and elevate, not compete with, traditional practices and sustainability principles. Pause. What's up? Where are we? Down by 3. Oh, I'm so sorry, but that sounded good. I really do think the game is going to still be going when we get through this. I started my journey not far from my house in Nashville at Caney Fork Farms in Tennessee, exploring traditional approaches to food production. There's huge promise in regenerative and conservation agriculture. These are traditional approaches that mimic natural ecosystems, that improve soil health and draw down carbon dioxide into the soil while producing food. And Caney Fork is also beginning to integrate big data and precision technologies to expand the potential of regenerative farming and the scale. This work is really important because it helps solve climate change in ways that, by cultivating food in ways that sequester carbon. So for every 1% increase in organic matter in the soil, an acre locks away about 10 more tons of carbon. That dark pigment in the soil is in fact carbon, and generally speaking, the darker the soil, the more carbon it contains, and those of you who are urban farmers in this group know this well. But the larger picture is really exciting. All told, the world's farmland may be able to sequester as much CO2 as the total amount emitted from the transportation sector, and nearly as much as the global electricity industry. So agriculture, which has long been a driver of climate change, has the extraordinary advantage of being able to transform from sinner to saint, right? Not just becoming less bad, but actually becoming the solution. I spent a lot of time with mycologists. I spent some time today with Loyola mycologists, but I spent time with mycologists learning about the role of underground fungal networks in soil. They nourish the roots of trees and plants, but fungi are powerful and underappreciated allies in the quest to solve climate change. A group of fungi known as mycorrhizae draw down and store more than 13 billion tons of CO2 annually. That's nearly the annual greenhouse gas input of China and the US combined. And the data reminds us how critical it is to farm in ways that protect the health of soil, avoiding deforestation and farming in ways that reduce the use of agrochemicals, which can damage these subterranean networks. We'll check in on the score after ancient plants. I'm really interested in research on ancient plants, and I realize we're sort of popping through a lot of these different areas of research, but I was tasked with the job of setting a big, wide range for the discussion you're going to be having tomorrow. So thus, all these different realms, but they all relate to this central question of how do we build a sustainable food supply? And I think ancient plants are going to play an important role. And many of these plants adapted millennia ago to extreme climate conditions and could be brought back to thrive again. Kernza, which is what you see over on the left there, has roots of up to 9 feet that reach down into subterranean water resources. Moringa over on the right, did I say? Anyway, you see which one. Moringa is an extremely high nutrient ancient superfood. I think it originated in Mexico that thrives in drought conditions. And in the center, you see millet. The startup Dryland Genetics is developing new strains of millet as an alternative grain. And under dry conditions, it can produce twice as much grain per unit of water than corn or sorghum. And here's where the story takes a plot twist. Score. Anybody have the score? Tied. Wow. Nail biter. I spent lots of time looking at the past, but I also looked toward more controversial tools of the future, and including the development of drought-resilient crops using technologies like genetic modification and gene editing tools like CRISPR. The FDA recently approved what's called HB4, which is a new wheat varietal, bioengineered for drought tolerance with a gene borrowed from a sunflower. And it's pioneered by an Argentine company called Bioceres. It's maybe an early milestone among crops designed to survive in climate-stressed conditions. That sounded good. All that applause. Is that decisive? And on the right, you see a genetically modified corn varietal dubbed smart corn, which stands on fatter stalks. It grows less than 7 feet tall. It's about 1/3 shorter than the height of conventional corn so that it can better withstand derecho winds and superstorms. You may remember those 100-mile-an-hour winds that caused billions of dollars of damage across millions of acres of crops in the Midwest in recent years. Well, that's what pushed this research, and we can debate the merits of it going forward, but there is certainly an argument that some of this advanced breeding, which can produce new varieties of crops in about a year or two, compared to the 8 or 10 years it takes to produce crops with conventional breeding, could be very, very useful in our effort to adapt to these new climate stresses. I also encountered surprising approaches to new robotic machines that potentially can help rather than hurt the land. Meet Jorge Herod. He's a Peruvian-born engineer who lives in Silicon Valley, and his company invented AI robots called See and Spray that can weed crops with sniper-like precision. And under this white shield in the back of the tractor are 24 cameras that use computer vision to see the ground beneath and deploy tiny jets of concentrated fertilizer or herbicide to incinerate the baby weeds. Robotics can potentially end the practice of broadcast spraying chemicals across millions of acres of crops and can cut herbicide use by more than 90%. Remember all that we were saying about healthy soil? This is coming back around to that point. The bigger picture is even more exciting, and you can see here how precise. This was on one of the maiden voyages of See and Spray, that robot you just saw back there. You can see it blasted the pigweed and spared the baby or emerging crop right in the middle there. But the bigger picture is exciting, right? Intelligent machines can treat plants individually, applying not just herbicides, but pesticides and fungicides and fertilizers on a plant-by-plant rather than field-by-field basis. So eventually, this kind of hyper-specific farming could allow for more diversity and intercropping on fields so that large farms could mimic natural systems and improve soil health. Harad is an interesting embodiment of third-way thinking. As he put it, robots don't have to remove us from nature, they could help us restore it. And of course, these tractors are hugely expensive, but they are being introduced to small and mid-sized farmers through sharing programs, such as Hello Tractor in Africa, which is a kind of Uber for expensive farming machinery that can be shared through cooperatives. But it's also possible that tractors may be left in the dust by these guys, which are so-called agri-drones, which are essentially featherweight flying tractors. One onion farmer that I met with had just purchased this $40,000 drone, which is no doubt a very expensive piece of machinery, but it's a lot cheaper than a $700,000 tractor that was the alternative. And it was saving him money in its precision application of chemicals. He was already getting, in his first use of this agri-drone, a 15% reduction in agrochemical use, and he's able also to use it for seeding his fields, intercropping his fields, and most notably, it enables farmers to manage their fields after big rains, where they're not able to bring machinery into the fields because the soil is too sodden. This brings us to vertical farming and indoor cropping. Increasing crop diversity will be crucial to building resilient food systems, and so will decentralizing food production so that when producers in one region are disrupted, the others around them can keep growing. And the rise of vertical farms may play an important role. Hydroponic, aeroponic, and aquaponic farms. I know you have a beautiful demonstration of aquaponics and aquaponics and hydroponics on campus. They can use up to about 90% less water than in-field vegetable production and grow food, in some cases, about 40% faster, given the 24-hour cycle. More food can be grown inside the space of a soccer goal than can be grown in the space of a soccer field outdoors. And when located in and near cities, these vertical and indoor cropping facilities can eliminate huge amounts of trucking and food waste, and of course, slash the use of chemicals. I think it was Bailey who said to me today that the more she works on the indoor cropping facility at Loyola, the more she realizes that this could help solve world hunger, and that it feels like an opportunity to merge, innovation with a sustainable future. So here again, we see potential for technology not competing with natural systems, but helping to support and elevate and borrow from the wisdom of natural ecosystems. And I think, too, that when you liberate a lot of, for example, lettuce farming or this highly perishable crop farming, let's say in Yukon, Arizona, where most lettuces are grown right now, a lot of that land could be returned, reforested, rewilded, which in turn creates more potential for carbon sequestration. We cannot leave this conversation. Here's another just snapshot of what these different approaches to vertical farming, aquaponics, and hydroponics look like. We cannot wrap up this discussion without talking about meats. And I do feel like we need one more update on the is it not good? I see, oh my gosh, down by 9 seconds. All right, we'll get through meat and then we'll know. We'll know the outcome. But plant-based and alternative meats, I know you've heard quite a bit about them, but we can follow, they potentially can help us follow a trend toward local, resilient, low-carbon protein production. And despite the controversy, there may even be some promise in the future of cultured or cell-based meats. Uma Valetti, who's there on the left, served me my first plate of lab-grown duck breast, harvested from a bioreactor. And I did have to sign my life away before I ate it, but I'm still here standing. And I have not yet started quacking. It's possible, though, so pull me aside if I do. But it had been grown from a small sample of muscle and fat cells that were given a controlled environment to do what cells naturally do, which is replicate. This cell-based meat potentially has very little threat of bacterial contamination and up to 85% lower CO2 emissions. And like the produce grown in vertical farms, it could be produced locally at distributed, decentralized indoor facilities without threat of supply chain disruption. There's so much land that's locked away right now in cattle grazing and in meat production that it could liberate a tremendous amount of land to be rewilded and reforested. Billions of dollars, and I'm sure you're familiar with some of these images, but billions of dollars are flowing into meat alternatives, producing everything from beef to seafood. And if it proves cost effective, this meat, which can be grown with all the flavor and nutrients and radical efficiency, but without inhumane conditions, without the bones and organs and feathers and sentience, and without animal cruelty, could have a great deal to offer a sustainable food future. So in my research, I have met dozens of scientists and engineers who emulate third-way thinking. They're using state-of-the-art technology not to damage sustainable food systems, but to learn from them and help elevate them. They're using modern tools to create nutrition heirloom crops that, as we saw, can withstand drought and heat, making aquaculture sustainable. That blue image in the middle is an underwater robot that's helping to bring efficiency and safety to underground fish farms. They're finding ways to eliminate food waste, using drones and soil sensors and big data to grow crops with precision and fewer inputs, most notably damaging agrochemicals. They're developing micro-irrigation technologies and large-scale desalination and sewage recycling plants that develop a drought-proof water supply. As we discussed earlier, that's going to be crucial to a sustainable food supply going forward. They are even merging the energy and ag industries. And we're down to the final couple of slides here. We're seeing a powerful intermingling of old and new ideas, particularly in this emergence of agrivoltaics, which is a fascinating new field that's marrying solar photovoltaic with agriculture, both in, this is strawberries here depicted here, both in row crops, but also in livestock production. So I want to end this commentary on you, on the role that you will play in this transformative shift, particularly the youngest people, the students in this room. The farmers who grew the food that we ate for dinner most likely are at the end of their careers. There was an agricultural census that came out a couple of weeks ago. And it found that the average American farmer is now 58.1 years old. That's actually an increase of about half a year compared to the last ag census in 2017. The farmers who are 65 and older increased by 12% in this census. Agriculture needs Gen Z, and Gen Z is beginning to transform and shift the definition of what agriculture can be. A growing number of first-generation farmers have begun to enter the field, and by field I don't mean it literally, because that definition of farmer is changing. The field might look like the laboratories and facilities that you've been developing here on campus. And I think Gen Z has great promise to bring us into a new era in which human innovation that marries new and old approaches to food production can, and I think we have good reason to believe will, redefine sustainable food on a grand scale. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to all of the wonderful people who have been with us virtually and have not been able to hear all of the hooting and hollering outside. I have a feeling that maybe we don't have the optimal outcome. What is it? I see shaking heads. It was not a victory out there, but it was a victory in here. We could share it together. Thank you very much. Can I start with a question for you, Nancy? Oh, sure. I am curious about what inspires and excites you most about this incredible facility that you have built at the School of Environmental Sustainability. I mean, I have, as you heard, traveled a lot of places, and this is one of the most, I think, beautiful representations of agricultural innovation I've seen on any campus.
Thank you for that, Amanda, and it certainly isn't my doing alone. I'm not behind the scenes person, but there's a lot of really incredible talent in our faculty and staff, but I would say also across the university. There are people that really care about the environment and keep urging us on, do more, do more. So it really does take a village, and I think we've got that here at the university. And I would say at any university, you need the students pushing from the bottom up, and you need really good leadership at the top that's saying, this is a priority, this is in our strategic plan, we've got it in the capital campaign, we've got it in the new campus master plan. It's got to be in the big plans, and it's got to be coming, the push has to be coming from the students. The rest of us just do the logistics in the middle.
Yeah, and are you noticing, as I am, and Vanderbilt, where I teach, is not, please, this is off the record. I'm gonna bring this model of innovation down to our campus and say, look what's possible. But we are noticing that every new first-year class of students that comes in is more and more interested in not just the sciences and climate science, but in this intersection of the sciences and the humanities, which is so beautifully demonstrated in your facility, right? Applied learning. One of the students today was saying that she came in as an environmental sciences major, and is that right? And might be leaving as a science, I'm sorry, wait, what was it? Environmental studies, thank you, and might be moving into harder sciences, which is great. That's exactly why these kind of demonstration facilities are so important. It really empowers students in so many ways. Okay, enough chatter. questions?
Hi there. My name's Robert Kennedy. I'm an international affairs master's student, actually focused on the global food system and media within that. So thank you for coming here.
You're welcome.
But yeah, I mean, it's a very big subject to cover. I'm taking classes in a range of things, trying to be well-rounded, but I know it's a lot. It's a wide range of things to cover. So for someone who's interested in making media about the global food system, where do I start? What's a good thing that you see as maybe the most pressing thing that has to get covered, maybe Gen Z in farming, or just, if I'm trying to get my start, what's the first good step?
Great question. Well, you might want to talk with Dr. Tuckman after this and see if they're developing a media dimension of the sustainability studies programming, because it's actually, and I teach science writing as one of my courses, and it's really interesting how hard this story is to tell and how important it is to tell it and tell it creatively. And I think your generation is the best storytelling generation of our time, maybe ever. You certainly have had more tools in communication and storytelling and learned how to wield them masterfully at earlier ages than any previous generation. So I think what you can do with multi-platform storytelling, with film and podcasting, to depict what's possible. I mean, I think this is a very emotional and difficult issue to talk about, in part because food is a love language. Food was, in my household, it was the way that the affirmation and love was expressed by my mother. She wasn't a very verbally affirming woman, but she was very, very affirming in the food and the flavors that she brought to our table. And so when we talk about radical transformations in food production, it actually is very threatening, and it's threatening to our personal histories. It's threatening to cultural traditions, and that's important. It's very, very important to tell this story responsibly and carefully, and consider how much is at stake, how much is being lost, and how painful this transition is for a lot of farmers and people who depend on food. But we also have to be very careful to talk about innovation responsibly, right? Food technology has been destroying food systems for a long time and posing real threats. And I think there is real possibility for us to judiciously use innovation and tech in a way that is supportive of natural systems. So that's a nuance in the storytelling that if you look at most of what's out there, it's either, again, anti-tech or pro-tech, and there's no kind of thoughtful middle ground in the way that we think about moving forward. So definitely bring your storytelling skills, bring your great innovative, maybe TikTok is not going to be usable in the next few months, but any other ways that you have to tell to tell the story creatively, and do so with that sensitivity to to both sides of the argument. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello. My name is Christina. I'm a graduate student at DePaul University. So my question is, so we talked a lot about how technology can help farmers by advancing the work that they're able to do, growing. However, we know that in many lower income communities that are suffering, and there are smaller community gardens that are helping to address food apartheid that exists inside of these communities. However, these growers may not have access to these very expensive new technologies. So what's the role of addressing capitalism to be able to create equitable food changes throughout?
Great question. And it's absolutely true that local food webs, local and regional food webs will become more and more and more essential because our centralized food system is incredibly vulnerable to disruption. We saw that in the COVID pandemic when there would be a COVID outbreak at a meat packing facility and we'd shut it down and suddenly a fifth or a quarter of all of our meat supply was like offline. In an era of disruption, having this, this very centralized, food conglomerate style production is not only unethical, but it's more and more vulnerable to disruption. So it's increasingly less strategic economically. Local food webs need and deserve support at the policy level, and there's no question that we have to invest a lot of our time and energy in local and state level food policies. We also need a Bill of Rights for workers in the food system that are completely alienated from the Farm Bill. We need a Farm Bill for farm workers and for small scale and mid-sized farmers. There's no doubt about it. I think we will also need some mid and large scale production. And some of what I was trying to get at with the ideas around tech sharing, I think hold real promise. The drones in particular, again, very small scale local and community gardens do not need drone irrigation or drone applicators. But mid-scale farms may benefit tremendously from that, and it can be much more affordable if we build out cooperative and sharing programming. And Hello Tractor is a great example of one of these tech sharing programs that make these kind of emerging technologies more and more available to mid-size and small-scale farmers. But no doubt you've got your finger on it. It's everything about surviving the coming decades will be about investing more and more in resilient local food webs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you? Actually, I was told I have to frame it as a question. So I'll do my best to frame it as a question, but I do have to share something. I want to know, as a woman of faith who graduated from Loyola in 1987, what are we doing to educate our students here, first and foremost, our children at home, and what are we doing to educate our children here about this? In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. And he said, let the earth bring forth the green herb, and such as may seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, which may have seed in it itself upon the earth. And it was done. So I think first and foremost, this is my comment. We have to get back to the basis as educators, as teachers, as professors, as parents, as community members, as priests, as nuns, as the whole global community. And we need to pray and ask the Creator, who's created all of this for our good, so that we are stewards to sustain his world, that we may each feed each other, help each other to be the kind of people that he created us to be. And that's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to waste any more time, but I'll be at the panel tomorrow. Hopefully I can say a little bit more. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I have to say that Dr. Tuckman shared a beautiful story about the the facility that houses the School of Environmental Sustainability. And as I understand it, it was a convent, and it still has very close ties with the nuns who were in the convent and who feel that this work is fulfilling the mission and the spirit of faith, and that is deeply connected to God's work, and that is about renewing the integrity and the dignity of the earth. And I think it's really important to bring that to the conversation, so thank you.
Thank you for sharing, and those who have shared, we're going to go over to our online questions that we have.
I can hear you. I can repeat it, or we can go to the next
okay, I think
in-person.
We're good. Yep.
Okay.
So first of all, for the previous person who asked a question, please do join us tomorrow. We have a panel. Our third panel of the day is going to be about food justice and climate change and the intersection of those issues. We'll be having some people as speakers who are working on making sure that sustainably produced healthy food is available across the Chicago area to everybody, people of all backgrounds and economic situations. So please join us for that. And I do have a question from the people watching online. For Amanda, in your opinion, which avenue of food production or innovation should have the most time invested into it?
Absolutely, the single most important focus is soil health. I can't emphasize enough that the soil, and this to me is a great expression of the holiness of the land. The soil draws down and holds as a source, as a life source, carbon. We have an excess of carbon, and that is a building block of life. It is the basic economy of life is carbon. It's present in all living things. So the notion that healthier soil does a better job of drawing down and sequestering CO2 into the earth is beautiful. It's a form of, I think, poetic justice in this time when we focus so much on technology. Now, I think that certain forms of innovation can help us do that better, right? So I think precision farming and all of the above, including indoor cropping, vertical farms that takes pressure off the soil, technologies that enable us to radically reduce the use of agrochemicals that harm soil over many, many applications. Soil health is everything. And we have amazing potential to improve soil health. And I strongly encourage all of you who haven't yet seen it to go to the plot of land that is farmed on, what is it, the corner of? Winthrop and Loyola. And as I understand it, the results of the soil sampling recently were exceedingly impressive. It's got the best soil ever, basically. So yeah, it can be done even in the center of a bustling city, which is just so cool. Yeah, next question. Should we go back over here?
Do one more from over here. So we have, how do we advance a vision for U.S. agriculture that emphasizes healthy food production, local economies, support for small farmers, and a more inclusive system that encourages new farmers? So that's kind of a lot.
Big question. There's this very simple answer. Vote. Vote. We need good policies that support and encourage sustainable farming, and that advance and protect local and regional food webs, which are totally overlooked in the current Farm Bill. And we need to dramatically shift our focus away from old-style industrial agriculture and toward regenerative and innovative climate-smart agriculture.
Hi, I'm Jack.
Hi.
Thanks for coming tonight. Really great talk.
Thank you.
So I was wondering, I kind of see like a hidden specter to climate change, and to me that's waste and specifically plastic pollution.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about all these urban farms and vertical farms, and you can buy some of these products in stores here in Chicago, like I'm sure there's some companies people know, it's always like in plastic packaging. And so I was just kind of wondering what you have seen about like moving from that, creating more like sustainable containing and just packaging and like the idea of circularity.
That's a really, really great question. And I think that the problem of food waste is one of the single most important and single most difficult problems to tackle. Also, material science is a great area to go into that is sort of adjacent to this area of climate smart ag, but improvements in material science and biodegradable products and packaging, cradle-to-cradle packaging. I mean, there's huge leaps that have been made in the last even few years on biodegradable packaging, but it's expensive and a lot more energy and talent needs to be driven into that space. But it's fairly not. What I like about the indoor cropping scenario is that it significantly reduces a lot of the food waste between farm and store or farm and household, because so much of the losses in our food system happen in that transition. We have such a long distance supply chain. So, as we're talking about these high nutrient, high flavor foods like tomatoes or leafy greens, mostly are grown on the West Coast. Leafy greens in Arizona and Central California. They travel in a refrigerated truck, maybe 1,000, 2,000 miles to get to our plates. And if the truck breaks down, or they're spending all this energy to try to refrigerate it to get it all the way to the point of use, and it's just hugely wasteful. So the more we can bring those production facilities closer to the urban centers or communities regionally, the more we can help cut down on waste. But a lot of waste happens in households, and it happens at the retail level. And I have been really trying to focus on that in my household, and it's really humbling to track your waste. And in fact, we started composting. Nashville does not have municipal composting, but we do have a private, composting service. And interestingly, the NRDC did a very revealing study on food waste. I think it's 30% is residential, of national food waste. But often there were households that. First of all, are kind of middle and upper income households that are doing most of the wasting because they can afford to. They're buying a lot of that perishable produce that they don't eat or that kind of molders in the fridge. Or they feel better about their waste because they compost it, right? And so it's like, oh, this is virtuous waste because it's going back to the earth. But we need to put much more emphasis on avoiding the waste in the first place because it's all the resources go into growing the food. That we just want to be much more discerning about it. But there's some very interesting innovations. There's a new startup called Appeal Sciences that's creating natural casings for fruits to extend their shelf life, so there's not as much loss at the retail level. And there's some really interesting, blockchain and data science to help really improve how we're stocking our markets and making that food just only stocking what they know that the shoppers in each store will buy. There are improvements, but a lot of that is going to require a shift in consciousness. And I think this is what you were saying. We can talk all day long about policies and technologies and how we're going to, rebuild a sustainable food system, and some of it can be done, within corporations and by adopting new technologies. But a lot of it is going to require a shift in consciousness. I think it was Gandhi who said, this planet has the resources to fulfill the needs of humanity, but not the greed of humanity. And getting over the food waste crisis, which is very much a wealthy nation problem, is going to require a closer study of our greed and a deeper understanding of it, and reforming our inclination to over-purchase and leave our leave our leftovers. My husband has an aversion to leftovers. We're working on that. I'm always like, it's fine if it's 7 to 9 days. That's what the NRDC report says. He's like, I am not eating something that has been in a Tupperware for 9 days. But I, as a point of protest, eat the leftovers on day 9, and then I'm over it. But no, those kinds of difficult decisions are really at that kind of crux of shifting consciousness and deciding and getting close. I'm less likely to make the extra batch of soup if I think we're just, my family's going to refuse this. So it's tough. It's a tough one. But I do recommend that NRDC report on waste. It has great insight and information.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Patrick, class of 09. I work with Delta Institute, environmental nonprofit.
Oh, great.
When I was looking at the map that you have here, I was thinking about, we're just a few steps away from Lake Michigan. And
yeah.
I was wondering what role and what responsibility, if any, do the communities here in Chicago and the greater Great Lakes states, given the resource that it is and the impact that it does have on soil health. Is there anything that you came across in terms of your research about the role and responsibilities of Great Lakes communities and what that will play on the global scale for the future of food?
Yeah, well, I think that's actually a wonderful question to open up to the audience, because I bet a lot of young people and community members have great ideas on that. I mean, you are in an extraordinary place in the nation to have a kind of model for where communities should go, right? I mean, Illinois obviously has a huge agricultural economy and large-scale production, but you also have really intricate local and food webs, community farms, a big urban farming movement. You obviously have this, fairly unlimited, I shouldn't say unlimited because everything's limited, but water resource. So you're in if you look at climate models, this and the American Northeast are some of the regions that actually have the most potential to persist. And you have a lot of innovation happening here. So that kind of collaboration between the Loyola innovation, maybe partnering with some of the other research institutes, and building networks of local farmers, cooperatives, of all the kind of stakeholders in this, stakeholders in the local food web, who are doing both research on local systems, but also really invested in broader research and innovation at the national and global scale. I mean, what you have here is, I think, a really unique and special community of people invested in this. So to the extent that you can kind of reach across and collaborate and spotlight each other's work and recognize that Chicago is really one of the, leading communities globally for this kind of next level thinking that, again, connects local community work with big vision. It's very unusual. I mean, California clearly has been, Davis, Pacific Northwest, et cetera, have been doing, and there are other areas in the country and the world that have been doing really important forward-thinking research. But California is under huge amounts of climate stress right now. And while I know there's only been 1 or 2 days of snow this winter, Chicago's looking pretty nice right now. No, I don't mean to make light of it, but it is true that if you're going to warm anywhere, might be warm next to Lake Michigan. So there is going to be a lot of freedom to continue doing work here and without literally putting out fires, which so many communities are already having to do. So it's a great burden and a responsibility too to be on the front lines like this.
Thank you.
Do we have any?
We have another one from online. What role, if any, will insect consumption play in the near future?
Oh wait, did you want to ask? Oh, insects, yes, my favorite. I think insect consumption is going to play a very significant role and is already beginning to, perhaps less as direct source for human food, but definitely in a very significant way as an alternative for animal feed. And that's emerging as we speak. I think there are some, insect-based flours and additives that may scale very quickly and significantly in human food. But immediately there's huge opportunity to bring insects to replace, for example, soy inputs into animal feed. And to dramatically improve the sustainability profile of animal feed, which is a huge part of our food system that's overlooked. I mean, I like to munch on crickets once in a while, but I will say that I've had some trouble with some of the insect-based products that selling it to my kids. For example, I use my kids and bratwurst-loving husband as my Nashville neighbors. I'm in the world capital of barbecue, or one of the world capitals of barbecue, and there's not a whole lot of love for insects just yet. But I do think that there's a quieter story, and maybe there will be a pivot among consumers to insect-based foods, but there's a quieter shift toward insect-based animal feed that's really, really important.
We've got another one from the people online, if that's right, and this kind of builds on that in a way, I guess. What is the role? What do you see as the role of the consumer in driving the change that we want to see?
Everything. I mean, this is why Gen Z is so important. I mean, I guarantee you that Tyson Foods would not be investing, and then having interviewed the CEO of Tyson Foods, for example, and many other big ag organizations, they wouldn't be investing in meat alternatives and investing in essentially products that represent their own disruption if they didn't see major shifts in the eating habits and the values and priorities of the rising generation of consumers. And it's important to note as well that, not only are they catering to the consumer, the changing palate of the consumer and the more discerning and ethical palate of the consumer and younger consumers in particular, but Gen Z and millennials combined represent the largest voting bloc in the next election. You're just shy of the majority vote in 2024, but you're a very important part of the majority vote. You're, I think, 48 or 49% of the voting bloc in 2024. But 2028, as more Gen Zers come online as voters which I believe Gen Z is 12 to 28-year-olds or so, as those younger portion of the generation age, you will be the majority vote in the next presidential election, which with millennials, which is really important because consumers are also voters, and it's you that drives the change. It's you that drives the shift in mindset, and that cannot be understated.
You have suggested alternative meats and millet as two products we might be eating quite a bit of in the future. I'm kind of curious, to make sure that those recipes are optimized for the future. What other kinds of foods that you see are going to be, that we should start preparing to eat, think about eating right now?
Well, that's a great question, and I should caveat, I should couch that. I don't know that millet per se will be the food of the future, the grain of the future. I'm very interested in that as an example, along with moringa and kernza and these other grains that we've overlooked. Well, moringa is not a grain, but these other sort of ancient plants that we've overlooked that have great potential. There's a lot of breeding that needs to take place to make them, productive on the scale that other grains are now. So even though millet is very productive in drought relative to corn and soy, for example, it's far, far less productive per acre if you have irrigation and so forth. So it's not competing anytime soon, but it represents, I think, a very important lesson, which is that there are so many varietals that we have overlooked, and there's so many plants that for millennia adapted, to very stressed conditions and learned how to thrive in stressed conditions that may be very important to a climate resilient, food present and food future. And so I think we need to look to the wisdom of those plants. And it may require actually bringing in modern breeding tools to revive and protect and find a way to scale some of those ancient plants. So yeah, I'm just to put that caveat on the millet in particular. My hope is that we get to eat as much diversity and the great extraordinary wonder of the diversity of foods we have today. My hope is that we find a way to preserve that. A lot of people ask me that, like, what are we going to be? Am I going to be drinking Soylent and eating food pucks, in 2025? And my hope is that, in my book, I end on Thanksgiving 2025, in which not only are we able to eat the foods we value most today, but we've actually been able to protect and preserve local and indigenous foods that have been overtaken by industrial foods and bring them back online, maybe with modern breeding tools. I mean, my hope is that we can have as much of a sort of rich trove of food options as we have right now, because we are living in the golden era of food options and food diversity. I mean, some of us in the room, I'm not naming any names, but might remember when the first pineapple was available in food markets, right? I mean, the percentage of foods that we bring in from other nations, and including things like coffee and olive oil and so forth, it's extraordinary. I mean, we import more than 50% of all of our fruits, which are grown in regions that are where they couldn't be grown in the United States, and about 40% of our vegetables. Hopefully, we can find ways to grow some of those fruits closer to home, maybe in indoor or controlled conditions. But I definitely don't want to abandon this extraordinary moment. I hope that we can continue eating the foods that we have today, but with more respect and reverence. Because it's just incredible that we've been able to build a system that produces what we produce today. Meat alternatives is the one area of focus that I think is going to be harder and harder, and I think some dairy alternatives will come into play too. There's these what's called flora-based dairy products that are very interesting that I think may disrupt the dairy industry, which is certainly fraught from an ethical standpoint, but with a product kind of like the cultured meats that is almost indistinguishable from the original product and has equivalent nutritional value. So there are some, especially in the industries that center on livestock, where we may see quite a notable difference in how those food products are made, but hopefully our experience of them, the flavors, the nutritional value will only be, if not preserved, then improved.
Hi, my name is Donatella, and I'm an undergraduate student here at Loyola studying environmental science.
Lucky you.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm learning a lot. But I had a question that kind of piggybacks off of the one that you just answered. And I'm just wondering, like, as our food systems continue to evolve and as technology continues to evolve, what can we do to ensure that culturally relevant crops are protected? And how can we ensure that communities continue having access to culturally relevant food?
That should be the clarion call of this movement, right? That as we redress the problems of our industrial past, which really, limited and destroyed a lot of food traditions and diminished the nutritional value of our foods, that as we redress those problems with our food system, we also create an opportunity to restore that fabric of local food systems and of traditional and indigenous foods. And I think it's possible. Part of the challenge too is that some of these foods require very particular conditions in which to thrive, right? Cassava, for example, would be hard to produce here, but with controlled conditions, maybe it would be possible to do grow a traditional or heirloom food in a new environment. But I think that that is why community-driven energy and effort is so important, because yes, we do need to continue producing food on a large scale so that it remains affordable. I think part of the problem with a lot of the kind of sustainable food advocacy has been that it's pushing for solutions that tend to be really expensive, farmers market and Whole Foods, and we talked about this with those who are, growing beautiful hydroponic lettuces. It's like there's the whole food price, and then, Whole Foods price or the farmer's market price, and then there's the price that we make available to community members. So we have to find a way not only to choose to grow in, local gardens and local farms, the crops that represent the cultures in that community, but also, find ways to bring innovation to keep the prices affordable on a larger scale, because it's very hard to sustain an entire community on one local garden. So we can supplement with other foods that are affordable and produce sustainably at a larger scale.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And I think we have one last question from our viewers online. So as you're looking to a vision for the future and trying to imagine an efficient and sustainable system that that supports both the environment and humanity as a whole. What do you see as some of the key features of a future that sort of meets that vision and achieves those goals?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I didn't quite get it.
In a vision for the future where we have an efficient food system that protects the environment and meets human needs, what do you see as some of the things that give you the most hope that we can get there, and the key features that we would want to achieve in order to realize that future?
I am profoundly hopeful, but because of my students and my kids. And I think I'm very cautious about this answer because I actually have an organization called Citizenship, which is a youth civics organization driven by my interest in climate change, because I am very concerned that we often say, like, the youth are going to solve our problem. And we sort of pass those generations, the older generations that I belong to, pass the responsibility off to the kids and say, we have so much faith in you, and you're going to fix this. And they're going, really? You're dumping this in our laps? But I will say that today was a very hopeful and exciting day for me, because I met a lot of students who are fired up, who get it, who understand that the way we're talking about agriculture is actually much more expansive and intricate and dynamic than the way we've imagined it even 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, right? A lot of the future farmers will not be digging their hands in dirt. Those who want to will, or they might spend half of their time digging their hands in the dirt and half of their time cultivating crops indoors, and then linking that with outdoor farming. I'm profoundly hopeful that they understand the way that food production is diversifying. It includes architects, it includes electrical engineers, it includes programmers, it includes so many different talents will be brought to bear as we build out this sustainable food system of the future. And it's an incredible job creation opportunity, right? Because we can bring all these different disciplines and visions to what hopefully can become a very resilient industry. This is an industry that is one of the single biggest problems in our society, and has been making people sick. It's been emitting a lot of pollution, not containing it, not sequestering it. This is a very problematic industry that has this profound opportunity that the transportation industry doesn't have, that the energy industry doesn't have, but to become the single biggest solution of our time. And I think Gen Z gets it, and I think they're going to build it, and I think we, teachers and scholars and community members, need to do everything we can to support them in that, including pray. Thank you very much.
Wow, we really worked her hard, didn't we? That was terrific, Amanda. You really set the table for what we're going to be talking about tomorrow with the terrific kind of global overview, and then almost a full hour of really rich discussion with all of your participation, and those of you online. I really thank you all for that. And if you'll give me a couple minutes, I have a lot of other people to thank as well. I would really like to extend a very big thanks to the the School of Environmental Sustainability Climate Change Conference team. They've been working on this conference for months, and the team was really led by Margaret Helwich. Please stand up. And Stephanie Folk, who's in the back, please stand up, Stephanie. She was reading the questions from the webinar. And there are a whole lot of people in the School of Environmental Sustainability that assisted them on that committee, and I'd like to read their names alphabetically. Allison Carr, Megan Conway, Mary Dinsmore, Kara Duskevitz, Ray Dibzinski, Kevin Erickson, Debjani Gatak, Rachel Lehman, John Lee, Mark Mackey, Karen Shawaker, Tanya Schusler, and Zach Wakeman. Thank you all so much for all of your hard work putting this together. Also, a very, very big thank you to the sponsors that help us to put this on. We don't charge registration fees, so it costs us about $50,000 to put this on every year. And we have a lot of supporters, both outside of the university and within the university, that help us make this possible. And I'd like to give a special shout out that the keynote lectures presented as part of the Ann F. Baum Speaker Series in partnership with the Loyola University Chicago Gannon Center for Women in Leadership. And then we have lots of other contributors that are both community partners and internal Loyola centers and such. So thank you all. I just have a couple more announcements. Tonight's broad thing was recorded, so it was a live webinar that we also recorded. And if any of you felt like you got something from this evening's discussions and you want to share it with a friend or a colleague or somebody that you think would be interested, you will find the recording of this on our website, which is luc.edu/climate change, all one word, climate change. I think it's there. Or maybe it's just climate. Is that right, Stephanie? It's just climate? Both will get you there. Okay. And let me just tell you a little bit about tomorrow because we have a great lineup. So we have a series of panels tomorrow, a poster session, and also an exhibitor session. It's all going to happen in this space, but this is kind of a two-room deal, and we're going to put the wall back up. So this is the multi-purpose room north. And in this room, we will be having a series of 3 different panels. The first one starts tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And let's see, the name of that panel, or the title of that panel's discussion, is The Impacts of Climate Change on Global Food Security. So a little bit of a take-up from what we heard tonight. The second one goes from 11 o'clock to 12:30. Our second panel will discuss climate change and food production in the Midwest. So going from the global perspective down to the regional. And then finally, from 2 o'clock to 3:30, panel 3 will address climate change and food justice in the Chicago region. So for some of your questions about, what can we do in the Chicago region, the Great Lakes area, these will be 2 really good sessions. The poster session and the reception will take place in this part of the room, multi-purpose room south. They take place from 3:30 to 5 o'clock. And the exhibitors will be exhibiting in this room, but also kind of out in the lobby area throughout the day from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And those exhibitors are going to feature local organizations that are focused on climate change, environmental sustainability, sustainable food, and food security. Come for the refreshments, if nothing else, but stop by their tables and find out how you might be able to get involved. In closing tonight, I now invite those of you that want to hang out a little bit longer and maybe speak a little bit to Amanda or to each other to have a reception outside of the room. We'll have, some snacks and drinks, and we invite you to stay. That'll be open until 9 o'clock. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here. Good night, and have a safe trip home. Thank you.